not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. And let me just say, Kristen, that we're incredibly grateful and proud of the American Air Force pilots who did an incredible job last night. It's really an incredible operation, a testament to the power of American military. And I think what shows what can happen when you have that great American military in the hands of capable presidential leadership.
Yes, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, combat veteran. Unlike Tim Walz, you may recall. He was on with Kristen Welker on Face the Meat. Were they facing the meat? I think that somebody was facing the meat there. Well, a very good and happy Monday to you. A good day at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, from which our B-2 bombers fly. Such goings on, such goings on. Boy, there is a lot to get to. You're probably aware, you might have heard, that the United States military took action against Iran's nuclear weapons program. It's not a nuclear medicine program. It's not a nuclear energy program. It's a nuclear weapons program. The Democrats are on the side of Iran because, if there is any enemy that stands up against America, the Democrats are there with them. They want to date them. And when I say date them, here's what I mean. But let me get back to a couple of other things, because I was going back and forth with our friend Kevin Tober this morning. Kevin Tober, who works our social media and does lots of great stuff for us, Kevin Tober. And he made a good point. He said he was relieved and sees it as good news that Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was not harmed during Operation Midnight Hammer. Hey-oh, Midnight, because you remember there was a crazy San Francisco Democrat that they let loose on the streets that attacked him in their multi-million-dollar mansion with a hammer, used a hammer. The hammer came down, Maxwell Silverhammer. But Paul Pelosi not injured in midnight. It was around midnight when it happened at their thing, so very good news there. I've got to tell you, the Democrat Party, they should probably cancel themselves and just drift off into obscurity because they're just not the good guys. We've got all kinds of madness going on with them, and I'm going to get right to the. In fact, we are at 888-630-9625. That's our entirely toll-free telephone number here in our nation's capital, Washington D.C. from the mothership. A big deal going on in Iran, a very big deal, and the largest B-2 stealth bomber mission in the history of the world. Lots of these gigantic 30,000-pound, 15-ton bunker-busting bombs dropped from B-2 stealth bombers from high altitudes. And a remarkable mission, an amazing mission, all Americans back safely, no mishaps of any kind that we're aware of. We've seen aerial photography of the bomb damage assessment of the three particular nuclear sites that were struck, and remarkable things. I got to tell, my best girl and I, we were out with friends. We were out with great friends, with Jason Meath and friends out on a beautiful boat on the mighty Potomac River on Saturday. And it was, people say it was, it was kind of warm, wasn't it? It was real nice. It was a sunny day on the river on a boat. Everybody whines about the weather now. Now they're like, oh, no, it's going to be 100 degrees in Washington, D.C. Well, it's summer in Washington, first of all, and it gets hot here in the summertime. It always has. Secondly, when they say it's 100, that's the heat index. So it's like the feels like temperature. It's 84 degrees, but it feels like 135, so we should all open a vein and lay on the sidewalk or something. Ridiculous. But we were out on a boat, beautiful boat. And then we, as you might imagine, we were down by the wharf, southwest waterfront, went to a tavern with a wall of glass looking over the river and the boats. And we did continue. We had cocktails. We did have cocktails aboard the boat and after the boat. And it was wonderful, and still no military action. And then my best girl and I, we hopped a taxi cab, because, we had been enjoying beverages and adult beverages. And so we took a cab back home, and then lickety-split, practically no time at all. Hey, wait a minute. What's going on here? There are bombs dropping on Iran, and it's the U.S. military. So fascinating stuff. And there's been a lot of back and forth. I was going on with my friend Mike Opelka this morning, and he made a fun note. Mike did. He said, you notice over the weekend all the people on the news media, and how many of them still can't pronounce the word nuclear? How many people in the news media, reporters, experts say nuclear? Nuclear. Nuclear is not a word. Where does nuclear? It's kind of an important word. It should be, especially if you're a nuclear expert, you should be able to pronounce the word nuclear and probably the word expert too. But before I get into it, because I'm going to get into that, and it is kind of a big deal, and I understand that there are mixed feelings all over the place. It is done. It was done very successfully, very effectively, and one of the most, I think, my first comment when we radio show team started texting about it, I think my first comment was, "Wow, nice OPSEC." You know, talk about practice safe OPSEC. They maintained operational security until it was all over. And then at the press conference with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the general who I think was very impressive in the press conference, very impressive on Sunday, and the very good stuff. He was great, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, CJCS. He was great. But one of the things that we learned is why they were able to maintain operational security. But the first thing I started texting on our group thread was, wow, nice OPSEC. And, you know, at the Pentagon, I was at the Pentagon for 10 years as a news guy. And one of the great phrases there was practice safe OPSEC. Practice safe OPSEC. You know, it was during the practice safe sex time, and practice safe OPSEC. And it was a great saying because it was my saying, and I invented it. It did become somewhat popular. It caught on a bit, practice safe OPSEC. And, boy, there was perfect operational security on this one. That is, they didn't tell any Democrats. So it wasn't leaked all over the place, and our pilots were not put in danger by the Democrat Party, which they very often are, because they're not on our side. And speaking of not being on our side, I need to get to this, too, because a judge, a Democrat judge, ordered Abrego Garcia, you know, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, the Salvadoran MS-13 gang member, human trafficker, wife beater, restraining order that every Democrat wants to go down and have a margarita with, like the idiot Maryland Senator, Chris Van Hollen, not Van Halen, but Van Hollen. He got it. And then the idiot from Maryland, the other idiot from the Glenn Ivey, the congressman, going down to hang out with Kilmore Abrego Garcia, human trafficker, MS-13 trafficker, wife beater, repeated wife beater, restraining order, and therefore hero of the Democrat Party. Well, judge ordered Abrego Garcia released on smuggling charges before trial, just so he can kill again. That's why they call him Kilmore. And the Democrats couldn't be more excited. Hey, we got a wife-beating, human trafficking gang member from El Salvador in the country illegally, wearing Chicago Bulls hats and shirts, which means he's a member of MS-13, if you ask the gang experts in police departments across the country, but not the New York Times. And so judge orders Kilmore Abrego Garcia released on smuggling. That's human smuggling. This is the New York Times headline. Human trafficking charges before trial because the Democrats really want their daughters to date him. So amazing stuff. Wah, wah, wah. Federal judge denies detention. The Trump administration and ICE, they want Kilmore Abrego Garcia detained while he's awaiting trial just for human trafficking for a decade, in particular MS-13 gang members. But federal judge denies detention for alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmore Abrego Garcia. Isn't that great? And judge says Justice Department failed to make case for Abrego Garcia's detention. Yeah, failed to make the case. Let's bring in his wife, who's so terrified of him that she won't even talk about the restraining orders that she had filed against. So here we got this is the Democrat Party. They want illegal alien gang member, human trafficker, wife beaters. They want them released and not detained because Democrats want more crime. More Democrats, more crime. More Democrats, more murder. More Democrats, more fatal drug overdoses because the Democrat Party's not on our side. And if that's not good enough, here's another one. Mahmoud Khalil, who, Ivy League, Columbia University in the United States, is a pro-Palestinian, anti-Semite, racist, genocidal, radical Islamist lunatic. And he ended up, he lied on his visa application repeatedly. Hey, do you love jihad? Me? No. Do you want to kill all the Jews? Me? Huh? So he lied on all things. Well, now he is on the loose because the Democrats have sprung Mahmoud Khalil. You got the MS-13 over here, Kilmore Abrego Garcia. You've got the Jihad and Hamas over here, Mahmoud Khalil. And the Democrat Party, they're applauding and spanking themselves. They're just unbelievable. They're what? Never mind. Just amazing stuff. So, yeah, Mahmoud Khalil now on the loose again. And you'll never guess what he did. He went straight to Columbia University, went back to Columbia University, and started protesting against the Jews again. Because, when you're a Democrat all the way, from your first cigarette to your last dying day. Amazing stuff. And the news media, they've got headlines like, Mahmoud Khalil describes ICE detention, decries Columbia hypocrisy. That's Columbia University. It felt like kidnapping, Khalil says in his first interview. And there he is in the New York Times, which is a communist front group that supports the Islamic Jihad and human trafficking, especially child sex trafficking. You know how they love child sex trafficking and sex traffickers. Yeah, so newly released Mahmoud Khalil spotted back at anti-Israel protest at Columbia University. We should never give Columbia University another tax dollar in the history of the world. It should just never happen again. But the Democrats, and what is they had the other guy in from Egypt, right? And he overstayed his visa, so he was here illegally. And it turned out he loves, who does he love? The Muslim Brotherhood, which has been banned in Egypt, but not in the United States because of Democrats. And that's the guy that in Boulder, Colorado, set fire to the 88-year-old Holocaust survivor, man, who was marching in favor of Israel. And the Democrats, they say, and the Egyptian guy has got 5 kids and a wife here in the United States. Reminds me that Lee Harvey Oswald's widow is still alive and well in the United States, and their 2 kids are still alive and well in the United States. And they're probably fine. I don't think they did anything wrong. These people did a lot wrong. So a federal judge ordered his release, Mahmoud Khalil, from an immigration detention center on Friday. And where did he do? He went right back to Columbia University on Sunday to lead another protest march, again, right after the Iran military action. And there is Mahmoud Khalil, hero of the Democrat Party. They're going to run him for office. And the Democrat Party has joined the jihad. Aren't they great? All right, so we have that, just a little bit of Democrat Party update. And President Trump made the decision to drop bombs, a bunch of bombs. And wait till you hear, you've probably heard a lot about the military operation, but boy, what a military operation it was. B-2 bombers out of Whiteman Air Force Base, refueling repeatedly in flight. I've actually been in a B-2 bomber at Whiteman Air Force Base, the Spirit of Texas. And then I went up in an in-flight refueling airplane where we refueled multiple B-2 bombers coming up to refuel while I was in the refueling tanker. And that was a good day at work. That was a lot of fun. And now what becomes the answer? However, it is kind of a big deal. I've got a smart woman saying it might be the biggest week in the Middle East since 1979. You know what happened then, don't you? We're at 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. And everybody's talking about how Iran is going to retaliate, like terrorists retaliate, murdering and blowing things up, which is why some people were a little uncomfortable with them building an arsenal of nuclear weapons and increasing the range on their ballistic missiles. Barack Hussein Obama was fine with that, of course, because he's not on our side. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael, and talk to the nice people. Let's go to Ray, calling from Bristow, Virginia. Ray, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
A little humor first, Chris. I understand a California federal judge has ordered Trump to rebuild the nuclear facilities in Iran.
Another Obama judge. Rebuild. Deliver everyone back to their original state. It would be unsurprising, wouldn't it?
The reality is, why wasn't Tulsi Gabbard at the announcement of the bombing? Why was Tulsi Gabbard taking negative information from her intelligence service? Why is it that Trump doesn't trust his intelligence service? Could it be 51 people signed up to a silly letter? Who's he getting his information from? Mossad?
Well, certainly one source for our intelligence people is Israeli intelligence, because they're, of course, very well plugged in. They're wired in on every level and have been for a long, long time.
Our intelligence service gets information from Mossad and represses it. That's why Tulsi Gabbard got fed the stuff that she got burned for. She needs to go back into her organization and start firing people right outside. Yeah, or she needs to go herself.
Yeah, she did come out and try to clarify. Well, Iran is not building a nuclear. They're enriching uranium, and it's 60%. They've enriched to 60% purity, which means that they're just this close. I'm holding my index finger 1/2 an inch over my right thumb, this close to being able to weaponize that, turn that into a bunch of weapons. And I was talking about these numbers last week. They've turned out to be accurate. 9 to 12 nuclear weapons with the amount of enriched uranium that they possessed. Also, and I talked about this last week, I hope that Israel was keeping an eye on these facilities, especially Fordo, because they were going to be trying to slip the enriched uranium out the back door. And then I don't know, and they did slip stuff out the back door. And I don't know if we know where it is, but I certainly hope that we do. And if we don't, that Israel probably does. There was also an interesting moment that the Chinese flew airplanes into Iran. They are communists, and they're in bed with Iran along with Putin, who's a communist, And then there are the Democrats. All right, big goings on in the world, big goings on, and what comes next? There are a lot of moccasins yet to drop. Know that during Joe Biden's time in the White House, we had a very great increase in the number of Iranians captured illegally crossing our southern border like they're coming to pick strawberries or something, but they're not. And that's potentially a big deal now. Now, we, sane, rational people, adults, not Democrats, we've been saying for quite some time now that when you have open borders, there are national security threats associated with open borders. And the Democrats yelled at you that you're a racist, right? And then they handed their daughter over to ISIS or whoever they wanted to MS-13. They're not the brightest bunch in the world. But the statistics are that 48%, nearly half, of Iranians arrested at our southern border between 2021 and 2024 under Joe Biden. We nabbed 1,504 Iranians arrested at our southern border, coming in illegally, sneaking in illegally. And the Biden people released 729 of them. So 48%, about half of them, were just released into the United States, Iranians. And I'm sure very nice people. But why are you sneaking in illegally across the southern border? And hundreds, there's this old term that has been bandied about a bit, sleeper cells. You're familiar with that? Sleeper cells? That's not like the kids having a pillow fight late at night, anything like that. That is mass murderers lying in wait because the Democrats. And it's just amazing stuff. Now, we learned about this, and we started getting details very, very quickly, I've got to say. It's amazing how much detail we got, and the press briefing at the Pentagon by the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was just chock full of information. It was quite remarkable. We had 7 B-2 bombers, all flying out of Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, where I went and boarded my B-2 bomber and where I took off in a tanker plane and went up airborne and refueled. I was down in the bay and the pod where the boom operator resides and the tanker airplane, while stealth bombers came up and got a drink and filled up on gas. Good stuff. But the 7 bombers took off, and there was a great deception underway. The bombers began by flying west as though they were going to Guam, which has happened before. B-2 bombers have flown out of Whiteman in Missouri and flown to Guam to pre-position for possible use in the region. And that means that there would be a delay of a day or two. And it was, turns out, all part of a great deception, because we know that the Democrat Party would betray us given half a chance to do so. They'd betray our military people, and they would endanger our pilots, and they would scooch the mission if they could, because they're not on our side, and if they can saddle up with Iran and the Ayatollahs, then they will. That's who they are. But the 7 stealth bombers took off and were headed west, and that was all part of an elaborate trick. 2 of the stealth bombers continued west, I guess, out over Hawaii, so that they would be spotted and like, oh, see, the stealth bombers, they're headed to pre-position at Guam, when in reality, 7, just amazing, the stealth bombers that were going to drop the bombs had turned around and they were headed east. But we created this, our military created this visual misrepresentation in order to throw them off the scent and to create the perception that it couldn't happen today, because if you're going west and you're going to Guam, then you couldn't be dropping bombs on Iran today. But the bombers were actually headed toward Iran, and it's a very long flight, of course. The bombers were headed toward Iran. The president knew it. The Joint Chiefs of Staff knew it. It's a 7,000-mile flight, 7,085 miles from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to the targets in Iran. Kind of a big deal. And the B-2 Spirit, the stealth bomber, it can fly almost 7,000 miles before it needs to refuel. And each of the bombers that was going to Iran was carrying very heavy payload of these deep penetrating bombs, and they're very heavy, 30,000 pounds each. 2 of these in the bay of each of the B-2 stealth bombers, that's 60,000 pounds. And another thing I observed after the mission was over, I said, well, when the B-2 bombers were flying back from Iran, they were much lighter because they had dropped their payloads, very heavy payloads of 60,000 pounds. So flying back, they used a lot less fuel And that's good for the environment. See, that's good because I'm always environmentally conscious. And that's good for the environment. Just amazing stuff. Wow, wow, wow. Now, the American people have been very concerned. We've been very concerned about Iran getting an arsenal of nuclear weapons, even though the Democrats are fine with it. 78% of us, when asked recently, are you concerned about Iran getting a nuclear bomb? 78% of us said yes, concerned about Iran getting a nuclear bomb. Only 21% said no, and it turns out those are all transgender Democrats, 21% people in the poll. But that number of us, 78% concerned about Iran getting a nuclear bomb, 78% is huge. That's almost 8 out of 10. And in April of this year, it was 66% of us. In May of 2023, 71% of us concerned. Now 78% concerned. So that is a major foreign policy imbalance when it comes to the American people. Amazing stuff. So the stealth bombers went to Iran. 3 stealth bombers dropped their payloads, 6 bunker buster bombs on the Fordow nuclear facility buried about 300 feet underground. We also had a ballistic missile submarine fire 30 Tomahawk missiles and blow up another one of the nuclear facilities. It's quite a mission. It was quite a military mission, and the in-flight refueling, the fighter escorts, the intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, and reconnaissance airplanes, ISR, your spy planes, intelligence planes, watching the skies and all that. It was quite a remarkable mission. And, you know, where were they? The bombers entered Iran. It was day before yesterday now. Seems like longer ago. Man, the days are stretching out these days, aren't they? But the B-2 bombers departed Whiteman Air Force Base at midnight on Saturday. They say 1 minute after midnight on Saturday, so late Friday night, going into Saturday morning, midnight 01, they left Whiteman Air Force Base, right? And then, long time later, the U.S. Central Command, and it's 5 p.m. Eastern time, so that's a long time. Now they left. You got to do all your converting for Central Time and da-da-da, but about 17 hours later, the B-2 bombers joined their support package in the U.S. Central Command, and the bombers entered Iranian airspace at about 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, and that's a long flight. You take naps. You know, there are 2 pilots, a crew of 2. Oh, yeah, the New York Times very upset that Pete Hegseth called the pilots guys, said our guys. And the New York Times said, well, there could be a woman in one of those planes. And they got a little hissy fit across. There could be a woman in one of the. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, she's one of the guys. It's all right. Calm down about the use of language, okay? But going into Iranian airspace at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and exiting Iranian airspace at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So they're in Iranian airspace for an hour and a half, approximately. And then they had the long flight back to Whiteman Air Force Base. But again, greater fuel efficiency, so better for the environment after you drop your 60,000-pound explosive payload. Wah, wah, wah. The dozens of airplanes, tankers and, the refueling tankers, the aerial reconnaissance, airborne reconnaissance, surveillance, intelligence airplanes, fighter jet escort in case the Iranians put their F-14s up in the air. My best girl, after we took in lots of news last night, my best girl said, we got to put on Maverick. We got to put on Top Gun Maverick, where they bombed the Iranian nuclear facility. They're using fighter jets and not B-2 bombers, but nevertheless, a lot of the details are actually the same in that movie as what we saw yesterday. Remarkable stuff. Now, the headlines from the news media, the New York Times, Iran had vowed to retaliate Now it faces grim choices. See, the New York Times, they're rooting for Iran. They're not on our side. They're on Iran's side. Aren't they something? New York Times says, if it retaliates against the United States, it could face a major war that leads to its collapse or to years of instability, a fate like that of Iraq or Afghanistan. Well, nobody would wish that upon anyone. So we got that in the New York Times saying, if it retreats accepting a ceasefire, it would be a shell of its former self. Listen, the New York Times is telling him to buck up and wage war against the United States. With its nuclear capacities crippled, its military depleted, and little leverage to negotiate for relief from debilitating sanctions. They have the commies in their corner, though. They have the communist Chinese, and they have Putin and the commies and the Islamists, because they love murder. That's the thing about the commies and the Islamists. Murder is their game, and they love it each other. All right, now let's get to where did you say it was? 23. Number 23, soundbite number 23. And this Richard Stengel wanker, what a clown is he? Now, we have Caroline Glick, I see, a number 17 as well. All right, let's go to this because remarkably, number 23. I was watching MSDNC, so that you don't have to, and they've got a fake reporter who's Melanie Zanona, and she's MS-13 DNC.
For the most part, Republicans are lining up behind Trump's decision to launch these attacks on Iran. The leadership came out with some really strong statements of support, and they also laid out what they are arguing is the legal justification for Trump launching these strikes without seeking authorization or approval from Congress.
Now, one of the things that the operational security, which held better than anything I've seen in decades for any military strike like this. But there were some interesting, fun facts. Republicans, most but not all Republicans, lining up behind Trump to support him and the strike. Melanie Zanona on MS-13 DNC.
Now, there was some notification to leadership, to the congressional leadership before these strikes happened, but we are hearing that there was sort of different levels to that notification, and it did fall along party lines. For Republican leaders, they did get the notice before the bombs actually dropped, and for Democratic leaders, we're told that they were told after the bombs had dropped, but before it was announced publicly. So that has really caused some frustration here on Capitol Hill, and Trump is required to notify Congress within at least 48 hours of military action.
Well, notified him within an hour and a half of military action, so I guess it stays within the lines of what is allegedly required by the Alleged War Powers Act, which may or may not be constitutional. But they informed the leadership, and only the leadership, of the Republican Party, and only the Republican Party on Capitol Hill, because they felt they could trust the Republican leadership on Capitol Hill. And they knew with 100% certainty that the moment they gave it to the Democrat leadership on Capitol Hill, that it would be all over the New York Times and MS-13 DNC. And so they did not tell the Democrats. And that is what we call operational security. That's how you maintain and I know this from my days at the Pentagon many years ago now. The line at the Pentagon always was, the moment you notify Capitol Hill, wink, wink, meaning the Democrats, it's public. Anytime you tell the Democrats on Capitol Hill, it's instantly made public, because 20 years ago and 2 days ago, they're not on our side. And so in order to maintain operational security, you must deny the information to the Democrats on Capitol Hill, the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's and all of them. They will leak it. They will undermine the United States. They will endanger our troops. They will work for Iran. or for Putin or for whoever it is that the United States is opposing. That's how you maintain operational security. You don't tell the Democrats. Now, let me say this. I understand the ambivalence about dropping bombs on Iran. Iran is not Iraq. They're a big and mighty and powerful, longtime empire of a country. The truth is there are proxy armies in Yemen with the Houthis, and Lebanon with Hezbollah, and in Israel with Hamas. They've been pretty well snuffed by particularly Hezbollah and Hamas by Israel. They're kind of like Michael Corleone taking care of all family business, and Benjamin Netanyahu is the Michael Corleone figure in this. But Iran is the granddaddy of them all, of the radical Islamic jihadi threats, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and the Iranians in the modern world, certainly. And they're the bad guys since 1979, when they were born of a war crime, November 4th, 1979, overrunning the American embassy, taking hostages, and that kind of got our relationship off on the current foot. And Iran, I was reminded, I was kicking back and forth over the weekend. Remember when they blew up the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and murdered scores of people and injured hundreds because they couldn't stand the idea that Jews were shooting pool in Argentina? And they say, hey, maybe a truck bomb is just the thing for that. Okay. And the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983, these are the bad guys. And now that you got the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas and more and more and more. And here they are on the precipice, and you can debate about Tulsi Gabbard and who said what and what it means, and does that just mean that they have to build it in the garage next door? I've got more on this coming right up.